So you want to learn how to draw the right way. But that's hard when nobody really tells you what that even means. In fact, a lot of artists will tell you that the way they got to where they are now is because they practiced a lot. And while practice is good, there are definitely ways to practice that are more effective than others. So in today's video, I wanted to give you guys some tips that are going to hopefully maximize your potential to learn how to draw and make the whole process even more enjoyable. And the first step to that is consistency. Let's break down what that looks like. The first hack I have for you is actually more of a studying technique called spaced repetition, which basically means to try and find a time to study for 30 minutes every single day. So practicing art a little bit every single day is going to be the most effective in the long run. You might have even heard this technique given to you by one of your teachers to tell you to stop cramming, because it's truly a more efficient way to both study and develop your motor skills like drawing. So don't overwhelm yourself, practice a little bit a day and you will see results, I promise you. Although this step sounds easy and theory, it's actually probably the hardest step to actually follow just because of how hard it is to stick to something consistently every single day. But it will get easier as you go on. I promise you, you will find time for it if you make time for it. Maybe study 30 minutes before you go to work, 30 minutes before you go to school, 30 minutes before you go to bed. There's probably some time span that you're spending doom scrolling or doing something else that you could do to develop your art skills, so I would recommend you to chase that. Step 2 is to find out what you suck at the most whenever you actually try to draw something. I feel like a lot of people, when they try to learn something, they stick to whatever they feel most comfortable with, because obviously they don't want to step out of their comfort zone too much. Like, that's just human nature, but I feel like a lot of people forget that when you learn drawing, it's different from like most hobbies because you don't have a clean slate. You've drawn something before. Art is probably one of the most accessible hobbies ever, and you've definitely done it in school before. You've definitely like learned it ever since preschool. It's always been some kind of extracurricular activity, so you already have fundamentals in something. And honestly, if you're watching this video, you've already probably started practicing art. So really just identify your strengths and weaknesses and try not to focus on your strengths, even though it can be really tempting to just do things that you know you're already good at. And that will hopefully be the quickest way and the most fulfilling way to improve. Which actually leads me into step 3, which is looking at the bigger picture whenever you try and learn things like shape and form and stuff like that. If you like the idea of drawing, you're honestly probably a perfectionist. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like everyone I know who likes art is usually a perfectionist of some kind. But I actually want you to try and step away from being a perfectionist or focusing on the little details all of the time. I feel like this is pretty prevalent in a lot of things, but mostly when you draw portraiture, is that if you don't focus on the whole and then move on to focusing on the little individual parts, your drawing is going to come out a little bit off. They'll draw the eye first because it's super exciting and eyes are also the most fun thing to draw, but then whenever they draw the face around the eyes, it just looks a little bit wonky, and that's because you focus on the details more than like the bigger picture. Always, and I mean always, break your artwork up into smaller shapes after you've created a big picture. It's always easier to kind of refine after you make this bigger picture, and it's also the easiest way to learn how to draw something. The way our brains work is that we tend to simplify things based on what we think they should look like. Like, if we have this perceived like notion of what a hand looks like, but in a reference photo the hand looks a little bit wonky, it's hard to depict the hand exactly how it looks in the reference picture because your brain is literally holding you back. So break that hand down into little shapes, like the main little palm area, and then kind of focus on the fingers as you go along, but don't create this whole notion that you have to draw the fingers individually. It's a lot more difficult to do it that way. Step 4 is to use references, but use them a little intuitively. I know I keep telling you guys to just break everything into shapes, but that's truly what I'm gonna say again and again, because that's the best way that you're actually gonna learn how to draw something. Like, for example, human anatomy, which is what a lot of people want to learn. Try and make yourself as uncomfortable as possible. Like, for example, I feel like when a lot of people try to draw anatomy and they draw like full body sketches, they'll pick people with very baggy clothing, and while obviously you don't have to draw like super form-fitting clothing on people all the time, if you truly want to learn anatomy, you can't like shortcut it by covering up all of the actual anatomy of a human and just drawing their clothes. If you want to learn, you gotta make yourself uncomfortable, and you gotta learn things that you feel like you can't even accomplish. And that's like truly the learning curve that a lot of people don't get over, is trying to learn things that you feel like you won't be able to learn. In fact, I think a majority of people that start a new hobby will eventually quit it because of the learning curve, because they realize there's so much to learn and there's so much you don't know about it. Drawing will take time. Learning any skill will take time, but that's okay. Like, that's kind of the beauty of it. Your art will have an ugly phase, you will feel like a fraud sometimes, and that's okay. Like, it still happens. Just be patient with yourself and tell yourself that as long as you keep going, you are literally ahead of most people trying to learn this hobby just because you're being persistent with it and you're dedicating those 30 minutes every day to learn. My fifth step is to ask for criticism and take that criticism well. I feel like this applies to a lot of hobbies, but it's really prevalent in drawing too. I feel like whenever you draw something, you'll automatically feel like it's a little bit better than what it actually is like, just because you made it. Like, that's like that implicit bias. Like, sometimes I'll cook something and I'm convinced it's the best thing ever, but nobody likes it but me. I call this artist blindness, and I feel like whenever it's involved in art, it's just because you've been staring at a piece for so long. Like, you need a fresh perspective, and the only person that can give you that is somebody else. It's because you're truly just constantly evolving, and especially if you're at one of those beginner stages, a lot of your art you will feel like eventually doesn't look as good because you were in a beginner stage. And it's not something to be ashamed about, but you should realize that whenever you start to learn something, you won't be immediately good at it, and that's fine. So ask your friends and ask your family or anybody that you trust to give you an honest opinion of what they think about your art. For example, I would usually ask my art teacher or my other like artsy friends for advice, just because they usually have your best interest in mind and they know what they're doing. So try and find somebody that you feel like you can see pretty consistently and would give you honest critique about your art pretty consistently as well. Step 6 is optional, but it's basically to keep it classy. And what that means is to try and use pencil first before you try and branch out into other mediums. This sounds pretty obvious, but like you will get the urge to like use oil pastels randomly when you're trying to learn art, and that's fine. Like, honestly, experiment. That's probably more important than just sticking to pencil. But what I'm saying is that whenever you're trying to develop something like technical skill, drawing will always be the fundamental of that before you get into more advanced things like painting or using other mediums. Like, you will find the urge to like splurge on a bunch of art supplies. That rhymed. As you develop your skill a little bit more, try some paint, try like coloring it. I'm not stopping you from like, I guess, trying other mediums, but I just want you to try and stick to drawing as your like fundamental base and then try and build off of that. I think obviously like learning how to paint is a great skill. Learning how to use any medium is a great skill, but I find that every other medium becomes much easier after you master drawing first. And because drawing with your pencil is the most accessible form of art in my opinion, it's also the easiest to learn. So it's like you're killing two birds with one stone. You're kind of learning these other mediums in advance. If you want to be like more like one-track minded about it, like start with drawing, then move on to painting, and then try and do digital art. I feel like if you covered those three bases, you can cover most of 2D art and like all the medias. Step 7, which I guess ties in directly to step 6, is to also use a lot of ballpoint pens. I'm sorry, I guess that does go against the idea of just using a pencil, but pens are like pretty much the exact same thing, except you can't make mistakes. In psychology, there's this thing called risk compensation, where basically you are more likely to engage in reckless behaviors if you feel like you're more protected. For example, some bikers that wear helmets are actually more likely to engage in risky behaviors just because they feel like that helmet is protecting them. When you draw with pen, you are a lot more intentional about the marks that you're making just because you know that you can't take them back. Whenever you draw with a pencil, you might draw faster, you might draw a little more recklessly in this case, just because you know that you have an eraser to fix your mistakes in the end anyway. So in this case, you're the biker and your eraser is actually your helmet, which is preventing you from making intentional line marks. But when you ride a bike, please wear a helmet. I'm sorry, I don't mean to condone that. That part's just a hypothesis. But yeah, after I started sketching in pen a little bit more, I've learned that before I actually like started making studies with pen, I was very indecisive about my drawings and I would take hours just erasing and redrawing. But once you use pen more and more and you become more confident about your actual line markings, the drawing process will speed up for you even when you draw in pencil, which is always a good thing. I really hope the biker analogy made sense because it made sense in my head and I don't know if it made sense out loud. As you go through these steps and you reach step 8, you're gonna feel like you've kind of developed your style a little bit more, right? Or at least you have an idea of what you want to develop or what you want to specialize in as you keep on drawing. And because art imitates art, you're gonna create a list of artists that you really look up to and that you really like their style or something about them. This is actually a hack I learned from my art teacher, and it's to basically like make a little slideshow at the beginning of the year, and we all had like a list of like 3 to 5 favorite artists and just listed a bunch of fun facts about them and why we like their style. It was a good exercise because at the beginning of the year we kind of had like a vision for like what kind kind of developments we wanted to make to our own studies and our own, like, I guess, artistic style. And that's something that I want you to do. Just find an artist or 2 or 3 that you really like and find things about their style that you would like to learn how to do. For example, if you really like The Starry Night by Van Gogh, you could probably search up a YouTube tutorial on how to achieve like the style of stippling that he did in that painting. And I honestly think like YouTube, anything online is a really good resource. Additionally, with the step is I would try and create like an artist study. I haven't done one of these in so long, but what you basically do is you choose an artist, you kind of recreate little mini sketches of their 3 best pieces or your 3 favorite pieces, and then you kind of just note the different type of techniques they used, what you like about the techniques, and how you can implement them into your own art style. I realize it does sound like I'm giving you guys assignments right now, but it is back to school season, so chop chop. Most importantly, I want you to be consistent and I want you to have faith in yourself, and I know you can and will develop your art skills because you're taking initiative by watching this video, and I'm super proud of you. I guess my final reminder is to not compare yourself to other artists. There's definitely like a learning curve that's different for every single person, so just don't compare yourself to anybody but you from before. Just use that as your stepping point and see how far you've come. Like, honestly, that's the most healthy way to grow and get better at art. It's 1:30 a.m. right now, so I've reached my yap limit and I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you for sticking out to the end, and let me know in the comments if you have any additional tips or feedback or anything else that you want to tell me. Okay, I'll see you all later. Best wishes!
Look at me.